I need help. For weeks, I've been trying to send out a message, but they've all bounced back. I'm hoping this one doesn't. I can't seem to send any kind of messages. Emails and texts bounce back, and any phone calls are met with dial tones. I can send and receive messages and calls from locals, like my friends and family within my town. But any time I try to access the internet or contact anyone outside of my town, nothing goes through. Now, I say I've been here for weeks, but honestly, I have no idea. I can count how many nights I've slept here, but time seems to move differently. The days seem condensed and sped up. I can stand outside and watch the shadows shift on the ground as the sun moves through the sky. Daylight will come and go in what feels like only a few hours, but the nighttime feels like days in itself. Once the sun goes down, time slows to a crawl. I'm typing this from my bedroom, in my home, while my family are all asleep in their rooms. But I don't think they're really my family. I don't think this is really my home. And I don't think this is really my town. There's other strange things that happen here, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. I think I know what night this change happened, and I'll start there. It was about 5 weeks ago, I think. Just before midnight on a Saturday. I was driving back home from visiting my friend, Jess. She lives about 20 minutes away in the next town over, virtually a straight drive down a county road. On my way out to see her, the roads and the weather had been fine, just your average June day, clear and sunny. But sometime throughout the evening, the weather turned. Leaving my friend's place, the sky was clear enough that I could easily see the stars and the full moon that hung bright in the sky. But as I was approaching the town limits, I noticed a light fog forming in the air. Not out of the ordinary, but what was strange was how quickly the light haze developed into a dense and murky fog. I didn't even realize how dense it was until I noticed I could barely see the painted lines on the road in front of my car. I was a little startled. I'd never seen fog so palpable and thick. It looked like if I reached out my window, I could scoop some up in my hand. But it's like it snuck up on me somehow. I carefully slowed my car and switched my high beams to low. I guessed my visibility was only about 3 to 4 feet, if even that. Thankfully, it was a quiet road, especially at night, so I wasn't too worried about encountering other cars. My town also installed streetlights along the road, so even though their light only appeared as a soft radiance through the fog, they still helped a little. Based on where I thought I was on my drive, I only had a little more than 5 minutes or so before I got into town and into my neighborhood. Keeping my eyes focused on the space in front of me, I tried to stay mindful of the road lines to make sure I was staying in my lane. My headlights illuminated the thin stretch of yellow paint, causing it to glow and blend in slightly with the air around it. It was the only thing giving me any semblance of direction and guidance. But between the darkness of the night, the glare of my headlights, and the fuzziness the fog created, my eyes began to ache. I took a second to squeeze them shut, giving them a quick break from the light. And when I opened them, I saw the vague shape of what I think was an animal standing in front of my car. Without a second thought, I slammed on my brakes and turned my wheel to try and avoid the thing. But I was too late. My tires screeched, and I felt the front corner of my car clip whatever was in front of me. Hard, It sent me into a tailspin, and I lost track of where I was facing. All I could see was gray. After a second, I felt my wheels slide off the pavement and onto the gravel shoulder. Then the right side of my car dipped off the shoulder and into the ditch. I suddenly jolted to a stop. I sat there in shock for a minute, checking myself to make sure I wasn't hurt and processing what had just happened. I was definitely bruised up a bit and maybe had some light whiplash, but otherwise, I seemed fine. The car was still upright, which was good, but it was obvious the car was leaning to the side, which was bad. I also realized my car wasn't running anymore, which was also bad. Although I couldn't see much, I knew I needed to check the damage to my car. Once my adrenaline calmed down a bit, I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight as I pushed my door open and tried to find footing on the slope of the ditch. I made my way back onto the shoulder and stared down at my car. The whole front corner was totaled. Obviously, I had hit something, but I wasn't going that fast. I expected some damage, maybe some dents and scratches, but the front corner of my car was almost completely caved in. You would have thought I hit a cement block going highway speed. What the hell did I hit? I turned around to see if what I hit, or if anything, was on the road. I used my flashlight to search the pavement, and after combing the stretch of road where I believed I hit whatever it was that I hit, I didn't find anything. I accepted that I wouldn't be able to get my car out of the ditch and moving again, so I pulled out my phone to call a tow truck. Dial tone. I let out a frustrated sigh and went to open Uber. I'd just come back in the morning with the tow truck from town. I waited for the app to load, but it never did. I tried sending a text to my parents, but it didn't go through. I tried accessing the internet. Nothing. My phone was a brick. I felt myself start to panic a little bit. I was stranded with no car and no way to contact anyone on a deserted county road in the thickest fog I'd ever experienced. I thought about maybe waiting for another car to drive by and hitching a ride back to town. But out here, at this time of night, that could be hours. I realized my only option was to walk. Thankfully, I wasn't too far from the town limits. Once I got back into town, I could cut corners, so it would only be about a 30-minute walk back to my house. I grabbed my purse from the car and started on my way. I walked on the shoulder, my phone flashlight illuminating whatever it could in front of me, keeping my eyes and ears alert for approaching cars. As the minutes passed, I started thinking back to the accident. I realized I was so focused on being stranded, I didn't even think about the fact that I totaled my car. I wasn't even sure if it could be fixed, and if it could, how much that would cost me. I began to think about what it was that caused so much damage. When the accident happened, I only saw the thing for a split second before my car spun out. It looked to be the size of a deer, but it wasn't standing flat on all fours like a deer typically would. Granted, the thing was moving when I hit it, so it may have been in the middle of a stride or jumping when I made contact. But even still, the more I actually thought about the shape of that silhouette, the stranger and more unnatural it seemed to me. I was starting to feel uneasy, and I tried to wipe the thought from my mind. I kept walking, picking up my pace. A little while later, I saw the silhouette of a rectangle emerging from the fog, and I felt a wave of relief when I realized it was the welcome sign to my town. I walked even faster, the desire to be home and out of this creepy fog ever growing in the pit of my stomach. But as I was approaching the sign, a rustling to my right caught my attention, stopping me in my tracks. I turned my head to see where the sound came from, straining my eyes to try and see through the layers of haze. I scanned the shoulder and the ditch beside it, as a chilled sweat formed on my brow. I stood still, listening. There was no wind, no cars, no crickets, nothing. It was dead silent, and suddenly I felt small. The dense air around me began to feel even heavier, like the fog was pressing down on me. I could feel tears welling up in my eyes. I just wanted to be home. And after a moment, I used the sleeve of my sweater to wipe my eyes. I took a deep breath, giving myself an internal pep talk to keep going. But before I could finish steeling my nerves, a dark shape leaped out from behind the town sign and dashed across the road. I gasped and staggered back, completely in shock. I half-crouched, trying to be as quiet and small as I could, and instinctively reached into my purse to grab my bear spray. I stared at the thing as it lurched across the pavement. It moved quickly, but with an uneven gait, like it was limping. The way it moved was so odd, and I honestly couldn't tell if it was an animal or a person. 1 second, it looked like it was moving on all fours, but the next, it would look like it was on 3, with its chest half lifted. And the odd time it looked like it was running on 2 legs. It was like it couldn't decide which was the best way to move. The only consistent thing about its movement was that it clearly favored its left leg. It was limping pretty severely, and seemed careful to not put too much weight on it. I suddenly felt a wave of dread as a thought flashed in my mind. Was this the thing that I hit? Had it followed me? I watched as the thing staggered its way across the road and eventually fade into the fog on the other side. As soon as it was out of sight, I stood up and took off running. I'd never run so fast or so hard in my life. I didn't hear anything chasing me, but I didn't stop or look behind me. The fog dissipated as I made my way into town, and the air was completely clear in my neighborhood. When I reached my house, I almost fell through the front door and had to sit in the front entry for a few minutes to catch my breath and calm my mind. Once I'd calmed down a bit, I quietly made my way upstairs and crawled into bed. My mind continued to race, reeling with the adrenaline from the night. I half believed I just hallucinated the whole thing, but eventually I drifted off, thankful to be done with that bizarre and unsettling night. But I was wrong. It was only just starting. I woke up in the morning to the smell of bacon and coffee. I looked at my clock. 8 a.m. I'd gotten home around 1 a.m., but I felt like I'd slept for 12 hours. Geez, I must have been tired, I thought. I rolled out of bed and made my way downstairs, anxious to tell my family about my car and all the weird stuff that happened the night before. As I walked into the kitchen, I was greeted by my mom, who was finishing setting the table, and my dad and brother, who were already sitting at it. The breakfast table had a spread fit for a king. Pancakes, bacon, eggs, fruit, toast, and more. There was even orange juice and Prosecco for mimosas. We were typically a cereal or toast for breakfast type of family, and only really did big breakfasts like this for holidays or special occasions. I asked my mom what the breakfast buffet was for, thinking I'd somehow forgotten a holiday or someone's birthday. "No reason. I was just in the mood is all," she said happily, with a big smile on her face. Odd. My mother usually huffed and puffed when she had to make a big meal like this, but I accepted her response, thinking she was just in a good mood or something. We all sat and ate breakfast as I told them my string of weird events that took place the night before. My parents briefly scolded me about my car, but were thankful that I was okay and made it home safe. My parents were never the helicopter type, and typically left my brother and I to handle our own stuff, but my parents didn't seem overly concerned about my accident, or about the weird creature I saw. They asked next to no questions, and I noticed them shooting strange looks at each other fairly often throughout my story. It was strange, but I assumed it was just them showing quiet concern to each other about what I experienced. As we continued chatting, my brother topped up his orange juice glass, then reached over and topped up mine. A seemingly regular and nice gesture, but if you knew my brother, this was very out of character. Normally, he would have poured coffee creamer in it, or would have accidentally dropped fruit or peanut butter in my eggs. Generally, he was usually a huge pain in the ass. I was left a little speechless. "Thanks?" I said to him, confused. "Yeah, no problem," he said, calmly and casually. No sarcastic remark, no snide comment. "Okay," I said loudly. "Why are you all acting so weird today?" They all stiffened slightly, and I saw a quick flash of something in my dad's eyes. "What do you mean, sweetie?" my mom asked, a hint of something in her tone. "I don't know. You guys are being weird. It's kind of freaking me out. But whatever. Forget it. I think I'm just on edge after last night," I said, trying to convince myself. They visibly relaxed a bit, their demeanor softening. We continued eating, but the air was a bit tense now. I wasn't sure if it was just me, but something felt off. Trying to break some of the tension, I mentioned needing to hire a tow truck to take me out to get my car so it could get fixed. My parents quickly interjected, basically cutting me off, saying that they would call the tow company and have it handled, that I didn't need to worry about it at all. "Oh, okay. Thanks," I said, pushing to add some enthusiasm into my voice. "No problem, sweetie," my mom said, with an eerily wide grin. I noticed her gaze lingered on me just a little too long. After that strange and tense breakfast, I decided to go for a walk to try and clear my head. I grabbed my phone and my purse and headed out, taking my usual route through the small park near my house. I left around 10 a.m. As I walked and took in the fresh air, my mind started to calm, and I chalked up my family's weird behavior to me being paranoid after my night last night, and them just trying to cheer me up. I found a bench beside the pond and took a seat, looking at the ducks floating and bobbing on the water near the other side of the pond. To my right, a little black squirrel bounded over to the pond's edge and turned to look at me. I gave it a little wave, but the squirrel just sat there, staring. Not that I expected it to wave back or anything, but after a minute of sitting there, it didn't move. At all. It wasn't sniffing the air or looking around. Its tail didn't shift. It sat like a statue at the pond's edge, its eyes locked onto me. As silly as it sounds, I started to feel uncomfortable. I slowly stood up and started to walk away further down the path. The squirrel sat still, but its eyes and head followed me as I walked away. I felt a shiver run through my body. What was up with that thing? As I continued down the path, I saw an older couple walking towards me. I recognized them as one of our neighbors, and as we approached each other, I pushed my unease aside and gave a polite smile and wave. Almost in perfect unison, they both waved their hands as huge grins spread across their faces. They didn't say a word, but their eyes had a strange, glazed look to them, and like the squirrel, their gaze followed me as I passed them. That was it. Something was going on. I walked a bit faster, pulling out my phone. I had to text Jess. Something super weird is going on here. Call me when you can. I texted, then hit send. I put my phone back in my pocket and hurried home. I breezed past my parents when I got back and headed straight for my room. I grabbed my phone to check my texts and noticed its clock said 3 p.m. What the hell? How long was I at the park for? I wasn't really keeping track, but I doubted it was for 5 hours. I opened my messages to see if Jess responded, and saw that my message was never delivered. I tried sending another one, failed to deliver. I tried calling her, dial tone. I could feel that same anxiety from the night before returning. Something wasn't right. My family's strange behavior, my encounters at the park, time speeding through the day, and my messages not going through. All of it was adding up to something concerning and abnormal, but I couldn't understand what. As the days went by, these happenings continued on. Less and less seemed to make sense. I tried my best to keep a straight face, tried not to ask too many questions out loud, and just go along with the unusual behaviors of the people around me. But it was getting harder and harder. About 2 weeks later, I woke up thirsty in the middle of the night. I got out of bed and carefully made my way downstairs to the kitchen to get some water. I rounded the corner to the hallway and was surprised to see someone in the kitchen. They moved past the kitchen doorway, and I saw it was my dad, likely getting a snack or a drink himself. But at that moment, I realized something. It made my blood run cold. I realized that this was the first time in 2 weeks, the first time since all of this weird stuff started happening, that I saw my dad walking. Every time I'd seen him, He was either sitting or laying down, and any time I saw him on his feet, he was standing still. I hadn't seen my dad walk in 2 weeks, and I don't believe this was just a coincidence. He didn't want me to see him walking, and I could now see exactly why. My hand gripped the wall as I leaned forward, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to retreat back to my room, but I couldn't move. My dad, or whoever this person or thing was, moved through the kitchen with an unnatural rhythm. His shoulders hunched forward, and his movements felt wrong, like they were deliberate but practiced, as if he was mimicking how a human should behave. The most gut-wrenching of all was that he was walking with a heavy limp, favoring his left leg. Then, as he passed by the kitchen doorway, he froze. I held my breath. His head turned slowly, unnaturally slowly, toward the hallway, though his body remained facing away from me. His neck craned until I could see the side of his face in profile. I panicked and ducked behind the corner of the hallway, my heart hammering in my chest. I clamped a hand over my mouth, afraid even my breathing would give me away. I didn't dare peek again, but eventually, I heard the faint shuffle of feet retreating. When the sound faded completely, I forced myself to move. As quietly as I could, I slipped back up the stairs and into my room, shutting the door softly behind me. I didn't sleep that night. My mind raced with possibilities. Was this connected to the creature I hit on the road? The fog? The strange behavior of everyone in town? This place had become a puzzle of eerie silences and distorted behaviors. I needed answers. When I went downstairs the next morning, my dad was sitting at the breakfast table, reading the newspaper. He glanced up at me and smiled. "Morning, kiddo. Sleep okay?" His voice sounded normal, warm even. But my stomach churned as I replayed the memory of his limping figure in the kitchen. "Yeah," I lied. I grabbed some toast and made up an excuse to leave the house, telling him I needed fresh air. He smiled and waved me off, but I could feel his eyes on my back as I walked down the driveway. I paced through the neighborhood, mentally analyzing everything that happened over the last couple weeks. It all clearly led back to one thing: the fog. I was certain it had something to do with the fog. It's now been about 5 weeks since this all started, and soon after the night I saw my dad in the kitchen, I'd started conducting various tests and experiments in secret. I've found that the fog never develops in town, but the fog sits outside of town all day, every day. And it has a pattern. Wednesdays are when it's at its lightest. You almost can't tell it's there. But Saturday nights, it's at its most dense. Following this pattern, I've taken note of changing behaviors of the animals and people in town. I've experimented with sending messages and accessing the internet. I've tried leaving town. When the fog is at its thinnest, it's like nothing exists outside of our town. Texts fail immediately. Calls don't connect to anything. The internet freezes and crashes straight away. The people and animals seem to act more normal than other days. They're more natural in their expressions and movements, but they seem to be less active and more reclusive. I've tried leaving town a few times on foot, since I don't have my car, but it proves pointless. As I walk, I see the world moving past me, but the horizon never gets closer. It's like I'm walking on a treadmill. When the fog is at its thickest, that's when things really get weird here. The people and animals become almost unrecognizable. They still look how they're supposed to, but their behaviors and demeanors become bizarre and unsettling. It's like they lose the ability to hold a conversation, and they always stare just a little too long and a little too intensely. I've tried once to leave town on a Saturday night. As people noticed me walking down the road, every person in the area stopped what they were doing, turned, and watched me. No one said a word to me. No one moved towards me or tried to stop me. But the intensity in their eyes as they glared at me made me feel like something bad would happen if I pushed any further. I got so uncomfortable, I just turned around and went back home. One thing that's given me a bit of hope is that on Saturday nights, calls and texts have shown some promise of going through. None have yet, but there's hope. Calls will ring once before dropping, and I'm able to access some pages on the internet. I have yet to successfully make a post anywhere, but I try every Saturday night. I've made progress in understanding this world, but the more I figure out, the more desperate I am to leave. And I'm gonna try tonight. It's a Saturday, and the fog is just as dense as it was the night I got to this twisted place. I've decided I'm gonna try to venture out of town, into the fog, and see if I can escape this false reality. I'm not sure what the townspeople will do when they see me, but I can't stay here any longer. I'm sending this post out, hoping it will reach someone. Then I'm grabbing my bag and leaving. I'll send an update when I get home, to my real home. Well, if I make it there. Even though I've studied this place for weeks, I still don't know what this town or what its people want. I don't understand why I was swept into this mess, and I don't know what will happen when I try to leave. Wish me luck.